They thought they had it all, a love story that began with hope, a future built on dreams, and a home that symbolized new beginnings. But beneath the surface, a storm was quietly brewing, one that would shatter their world forever. This story takes us to Patna, a bustling city in Bihar, where the tale of Shahnaz and Jafaruddin unfolds. Shahnaz grew up in a close-knit family, surrounded by warmth and love. As she blossomed into a graceful young woman, her parents began searching for the perfect match, a man who was educated, accomplished, and capable of offering her a life of happiness and stability. After months of searching, they found Jafaruddin, a promising electrical engineer from Lisari, a town not far from Patna. Jafar had secured a prestigious job in Saudi Arabia, a symbol of success and prosperity. To Shahnaz's family, this seemed like the golden ticket, a match made in heaven. The proposal was eagerly accepted, and their wedding was nothing short of a fairy tale, filled with joy, laughter, and promises of a radiant future. Life as newlyweds was sweet, and their love seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. But as life often does, change came knocking. Jafar eventually left his job in Saudi Arabia and moved to Noida with Shahnaz and their 2 young sons, seeking a fresh start closer to home. For 2 years, they built a new life in Noida, adjusting to the rhythms of a quieter, more settled existence. As the festive season of Eid approached, Jafar suggested a visit back home to Patna. It had been years since they'd last celebrated with family. What made this Eid even more special was the new house Jafar had painstakingly built next to Shahnaz's parents' home, a house that symbolized years of sacrifice and dreams realized. The thought of celebrating Eid in their new home brought a wave of excitement. They had no idea this journey would change everything, forever. The night had been serene, filled with laughter, love, and anticipation for Eid. But by dawn, that tranquility was shattered by a discovery so horrifying, it would cast a shadow over the family's lives forever. On May 1st, Shahnaz, Jafaruddin, and their 2 young sons boarded a flight from Delhi to Patna, their hearts brimming with excitement. It had been years since they had celebrated Eid with their extended family, and this year was special. This was the first Eid they would spend in their new home, built by Jafar with years of hard-earned savings. The evening of May 2nd was alive with joy. Jafar took his sons out for some last-minute shopping, perhaps to pick up gifts or indulge in festive treats. Shahnaz, meanwhile, stayed home, pouring her heart into preparing a lavish dinner. She made Jafar's favorite chicken biryani, a dish that never failed to make him smile. That night, the family sat together, enjoying the meal, savoring every bite, and sharing laughter as they talked about the upcoming celebrations. After dinner, Jafar retired early to bed. It seemed like a perfect, peaceful evening, but the night was far from over. As the first light of dawn crept into the sky on May 3rd, Jafar's elder son stirred awake. Something didn't feel right. A strange sense of unease gnawed at him, pulling him out of bed before anyone else. Quietly, he padded to his father's room, intending to check in on him. What he found would haunt him for the rest of his life. His father's lifeless body was sprawled on the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Beside him lay a pressure cooker, its surface smeared with crimson, a weapon crudely turned deadly. For a moment, the boy froze, his young mind unable to comprehend the horror in front of him. Then, a piercing scream erupted from his throat, slicing through the morning stillness. His cries woke the household. Shahnaz rushed to the scene, followed by other family members. What they saw left them in a state of paralyzing shock. Jafar, who had just been laughing and sharing a meal with them hours ago, was now gone. The screams drew neighbors to the house, and soon a crowd had gathered, their murmurs filling the air with speculation. The joyous preparations for Eid dissolved into chaos. Someone called the police, who arrived promptly, taking control of the scene. Jafar's body was sent for a post-mortem, and the investigation began. The police started their inquiry by questioning everyone in the house. Jafar's elder son recounted the moment he found his father, his voice trembling as he described the lifeless figure and the blood-stained pressure cooker. Next, they turned to Shahnaz. Her story added another layer to the mystery. Through tears, Shahnaz explained that the night had seemed uneventful at first. After returning from their Eid shopping trip, they had dinner as a family, and everything felt normal. But sometime in the early hours of the morning, she was startled awake by strange noises. Curious and alarmed, she left her room to investigate. As soon as she stepped out, two shadowy figures lunged at her from the darkness. She tried to scream, but one of the attackers grabbed her roughly, snatching the necklace from her neck. The other assailant clamped a hand over her nose and mouth. There was something on their hand, she said, her voice shaking. It smelled strange. Before I knew it, everything went black. She recalled waking up to the sound of her son's screams. The horror of the scene was the first thing she saw upon regaining consciousness. At first, the police believed this was a robbery gone wrong. But something didn't add up. Aside from Shahnaz's necklace, nothing else was missing. The house had other valuables, cash, jewelry, and electronics, all left untouched. This inconsistency planted seeds of doubt in the investigators' minds. Why would robbers kill someone and take nothing of value? One officer mused aloud. The theory of a simple burglary was quickly discarded. Instead, the police began to suspect a more sinister motive. The investigation intensified. Officers questioned neighbors, friends, and family members, trying to uncover any clues about Jaffer's life that could explain this brutal act. However, they were met with dead ends. Jaffer had spent most of his adult life working abroad in Saudi Arabia, far from his hometown. He had few acquaintances in the area and, as far as anyone knew, no enemies. He was known as a kind, hard-working man who had devoted himself to his family. Adding to the mystery, the police discovered that the house had only one entrance, the main door. There were no signs of forced entry, and all the windows were locked from the inside. How had the attackers entered? And why had they targeted this family on the eve of Eid? The absence of forced entry led investigators to an unsettling conclusion: whoever committed this crime may have been someone the family knew, someone they trusted enough to let inside. If you enjoyed this story and want more gripping, real-life tales, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support keeps us bringing you the most captivating stories. The pressure cooker, covered in blood, became a focal point of the investigation. Why would someone use such an unusual object as a weapon? Was it a crime of opportunity, or did it hold some symbolic meaning? As forensic experts examined the scene, they uncovered more puzzling details. The angle of the injuries suggested a frenzied, personal attack rather than a calculated one. This only deepened the police's suspicions that the motive went beyond simple robbery. As the days passed, whispers began circulating among the neighbors. Some speculated about jealousy or hidden disputes within the family. Others wondered if Jaffer's past held secrets he had kept from everyone. The police, determined to uncover the truth, widened their investigation. They began tracing Jaffer's life, probing into his time in Saudi Arabia and his relationships in Patna. But the closer they looked, the more questions arose. Who were the two attackers Shahnaz described? How did they enter the house without breaking in? And most importantly, why had they taken only a necklace but left behind a shattered family? In a case where every clue seems to lead to more questions, the truth remains elusive. But one thing is certain: this was not just a random act of violence. Somewhere, hidden in the shadows of Jaffaruddin's life, lies the answer to a mystery that has left a family devastated and a community searching for justice. The investigators found themselves in a perplexing situation. No doors had been broken, no windows shattered, and no locks tampered with. Whoever had entered that house had done so with ease, almost as if they belonged there. This chilling realization led to an even more unsettling question: could the intruder have been someone the family trusted? As the police pressed Shahnaz and the rest of the household for more information, they began to sense gaps in the story. Yet, there was no clear evidence to pin the crime on anyone. They needed a breakthrough, so they asked Shahnaz for her phone, hoping it might hold a clue. Without hesitation, Shahnaz handed over her iPhone, explaining that it had been a gift from her late husband. The police carefully examined the device, combing through call logs, messages, and any other digital trails. But the results were disappointing. There was nothing incriminating. Still, something about the situation felt off. The two young children were ruled out as suspects. They were far too young to commit such a brutal crime. This left only Shahnaz as a person of interest. While nothing overtly pointed to her involvement, the investigators decided to quietly dig deeper into her life. The police began asking questions in the neighborhood, carefully avoiding attention to keep their investigation discreet. They wanted to know more about Shahnaz and Jafaruddin's relationship, his decision to leave Saudi Arabia, and why they had chosen to settle in Noida. What they uncovered added new layers of intrigue to an already complex case. It was revealed that this was the first time in 2 years that Jafar had returned to celebrate Eid near Shahnaz's family home. The timing felt odd to the investigators. Why now? Why, after years of living away, did Jafar suddenly decide to bring his family back to Patna? As they dug deeper, stories about Shahnaz's past began to surface, stories that painted a very different picture of her life before marriage. Years ago, during her school days, Shahnaz had been involved in a deeply passionate and scandalous relationship with a boy named Kamal. Their romance was the talk of the town. They were inseparable, often seen holding hands and exchanging smiles in a way that drew both admiration and ire. Their public displays of affection didn't sit well with the conservative school authorities. The matter eventually escalated to the principal, who called both their parents for a meeting. In no uncertain terms, the principal warned that their behavior was setting a bad example for other students and advised them to focus on their studies instead of their budding romance. But Shahnaz and Kamal refused to let societal disapproval dampen their relationship. They continued their clandestine meetings, sneaking away to spend time together. When their defiance became too much to handle, both were expelled from the school. After the expulsion, their paths diverged. Shahnaz joined another school, while Kamal decided to quit academics altogether. He took up odd jobs, determined to save enough money to marry Shahnaz one day. His devotion to her was unwavering, and for a while, it seemed as though nothing could break them apart. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Shahnaz's family soon discovered the relationship. To them, Kamal was far from an ideal match. He came from a humble background, with little to no financial stability, while Shahnaz's family was relatively well off. Kamal's lack of prospects became a major hurdle. No parent would willingly marry their daughter to someone with no steady income or future. The family feared that this romance could jeopardize Shahnaz's chances of securing a better match. Quietly but firmly, they began distancing her from Kamal and searching for a more suitable husband. After months of searching, they found Jafaruddin. He was everything Kamal wasn't: educated, stable, and employed in a prestigious job in Saudi Arabia. To Shahnaz's family, he was the perfect match, a man who could provide her with a secure and comfortable future. Shahnaz, though reluctant, eventually agreed to the marriage. Kamal's presence in her life slowly faded, but the memories of their love lingered. As the police uncovered these details, they began to see a possible motive forming. Could Kamal, now a distant figure from Shahnaz's past, have returned to her life? And if so, had their old love rekindled? Was Jafar's murder an act of passion fueled by jealousy and unresolved emotions? The investigators didn't rule out the possibility that Kamal might have orchestrated the attack. But there was still no evidence tying him to the crime. Even more puzzling was the question of how the attackers had entered the house without breaking in. Could Kamal have been let in by someone? As the police probed further, they noticed cracks in the family's unity. There were whispers among relatives, quiet suspicions that perhaps Shahnaz had never truly moved on from Kamal. Some even speculated that she might have been in contact with him in secret. When confronted with these suspicions, Shahnaz vehemently denied any wrongdoing. She insisted that she had left her past behind and had been fully devoted to her husband and children. But the investigators weren't entirely convinced. The case grew more convoluted with every passing day. The two attackers Shahnaz described remained unidentified. If they were connected to Kamal, why had they left without taking anything significant from the house? And why had Jaffer been the only target of their violence? As the police pieced together the puzzle, one officer remarked, "There's something deeply personal about this crime. Whoever did this wanted Jaffer dead, but not for money or valuables. This was about revenge, or love." In the tangled web of lies, secrets, and half-truths, the answers remain elusive. Was this a crime of passion? A long-buried grudge? Or was the truth something even darker, hidden in the shadows of a family's history? As the investigation unfolds, one thing becomes clear: the answers may not bring peace, but they will shatter everything the family thought they knew about themselves. For 2 years, life in Noida seemed to move on peacefully for Jaffer-uddin, Shahnaz, and their 2 sons. Jaffer believed that the change of scenery had worked wonders, and he began to trust that Shahnaz had left her past with Kamal behind. Their relationship, while not perfect, appeared stable on the surface. Jaffer found solace in his decision to leave Saudi Arabia for the sake of his family, and he was hopeful about building a future together in India. During this time, Jaffer-uddin focused on his job, spending evenings with his sons and trying to create the kind of family life he had always envisioned. Shahnaz, on the other hand, seemed to adapt to her new routine. She was attentive to the children and supportive of Jaffer's efforts to establish their life in Noida. But beneath the surface of this ordinary life, hidden feelings and unresolved tensions continued to simmer. When Eid approached, Jaffer suggested that they visit Patna for the festival. It had been 2 years since they had returned to Shahnaz's hometown, and he thought it would be the perfect occasion to reconnect with family and celebrate in the new house he had built. Shahnaz agreed, though her response seemed oddly reluctant. On May 1st, the family boarded a flight from Delhi to Patna, their excitement palpable. For Jaffer, this trip symbolized the culmination of all his efforts, a chance to celebrate Eid with his family in their dream home. But for Shahnaz, returning to Patna stirred up old memories and emotions she had buried during their time in Noida. Unbeknownst to Jaffer, Shahnaz had maintained a secret connection with Kamal over the years. The distance and the move to Noida hadn't severed their bond completely. Kamal, fueled by his unresolved love and an obsessive longing for Shahnaz, had continued to wait for an opportunity to re-enter her life. When news of the family's return to Patna reached him, Kamal saw it as the perfect moment to rekindle their relationship. The idea of Shahnaz living so close to her in-laws and the new house that Jaffer had built added fuel to his desire to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. On the evening of May 2nd, Jaffer decided to take his 2 sons out for Eid shopping. They roamed the bustling markets, picking out gifts and treats for the celebration. When they returned home, Shahnaz had prepared a lavish dinner, including Jaffer's favorite chicken biryani. The family ate together, laughing and sharing stories. After dinner, Jaffer went to bed early, exhausted from the day's activities. Shahnaz, however, stayed up a little longer, her mind preoccupied. Unknown to Jaffer, Kamal had been lingering nearby, watching the house, waiting for the right moment to make his move. In the stillness of the night, Shahnaz heard a faint tapping at the back window. Her heart raced as she recognized the signal. It was Kamal. Torn between fear and longing, she hesitated before quietly stepping out to meet him. Kamal was insistent. He begged her to leave Jaffer and start a new life with him, away from the prying eyes of society and the constraints of her marriage. Shahnaz, caught between her loyalty to her family and her lingering feelings for Kamal, tried to reason with him. Their conversation grew heated. Kamal accused her of abandoning him and forgetting the promises they had made to each other years ago. Shahnaz, overwhelmed by guilt and confusion, tried to calm him down. But Kamal's anger and desperation had reached a breaking point. Driven by a dangerous mix of jealousy and obsession, Kamal entered the house through the unlocked main door. Shahnaz, too stunned to stop him, followed closely behind. Kamal headed straight for Jaffar's room. The scene that followed was one of chaos and horror. Using a pressure cooker he found in the kitchen, Kamal attacked Jaffar in a fit of rage. The sound of the struggle was muffled, and within moments, Jaffar lay lifeless on the floor, blood pooling around him. Shahnaz stood frozen in the doorway, her mind unable to process what had just happened. Kamal, realizing the gravity of his actions, turned to her with wild eyes. "This is for us," he whispered, as if trying to justify the unforgivable. But Shahnaz wasn't prepared for what came next. Kamal grabbed her roughly, snatching the jewelry she was wearing. He covered her nose with a cloth soaked in a chemical, causing her to lose consciousness. The next morning, Jaffar's elder son woke up early, feeling uneasy. When he opened the door to his father's room, he was met with a scene of unimaginable horror. Jaffar's lifeless body lay sprawled on the floor, blood smeared across the room. His screams woke the entire household. Shahnaz, regaining consciousness, stumbled out of her room, her face pale and her mind clouded with confusion. Neighbors gathered quickly, and the news spread like wildfire. The joyous anticipation of Eid was replaced with a somber air of tragedy. The police were called immediately. As they examined the scene, they noted the lack of forced entry and the peculiar fact that nothing of significant value had been stolen, aside from Shahnaz's necklace. This raised suspicions. Was this truly a robbery gone wrong, or was there a more personal motive? Under intense questioning, Shahnaz told the police about the two strangers who had allegedly attacked her in the night. But her story lacked consistency, and the investigators couldn't ignore the glaring holes in her account. As they dug deeper, the name Kamal resurfaced, whispered by neighbors and relatives alike. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The police began to suspect that Kamal's reappearance in Shahnaz's life wasn't a coincidence and that the crime was far more calculated than it initially seemed. The case took a toll on everyone involved. Jaffar's sons, too young to fully grasp the weight of the tragedy, clung to each other for comfort. Shahnaz, now at the center of the investigation, faced scrutiny from all sides. As the truth slowly emerged, the story of love, betrayal, and obsession unraveled, leaving behind a family shattered beyond repair. What should have been a celebration of unity and joy turned into a grim reminder of the consequences of choices driven by passion and desperation. In the end, the truth didn't just reveal a crime, it exposed the fragility of trust and the devastating power of unresolved love. As the investigation closed in on the guilty, one question remained: was this tragedy inevitable, or could it have been stopped before it spiraled out of control? At dawn, Jaffaruddin's elder son woke up, his eyes fluttering open to the faint light streaming into the room. Feeling restless, he decided to check on his father, who had been unusually distant the night before. As he approached the drawing room, he noticed the door slightly ajar. With a curious push, he stepped inside and froze in terror. There, sprawled on the floor, was his father's lifeless body, blood pooling around his head. Beside him lay the pressure cooker, smeared with crimson, a grim testament to the horrific events of the night. The boy's scream tore through the morning silence, jolting everyone awake. Shahnaz, feigning shock and dismay, rushed out of her room, followed by her younger son and her in-laws. The neighbors, drawn by the boy's piercing cries, began gathering outside the house. In moments, the atmosphere transformed from one of Eid anticipation to one of unimaginable grief and panic. The local police were called immediately. They arrived swiftly, securing the scene and beginning their investigation. The body was sent for a post-mortem examination, and officers started questioning everyone in the household. When the police spoke to Shahnaz, she appeared distraught but composed enough to recount her version of events. She claimed that around 3 a.m. she had been startled awake by strange noises. Upon stepping out of her room to investigate, she said, two masked intruders had attacked her, snatching her necklace and rendering her unconscious. When she awoke later, she said, she found herself back in her room and assumed the intruders had fled. Her story was compelling on the surface, but inconsistencies began to emerge as the investigation unfolded. The officers noted that while Shahnaz's necklace was missing, nothing else of value had been taken from the house, not even the cash and jewelry kept in the cupboards. This raised immediate suspicions. Why would robbers kill someone so brutally and leave without looting anything significant? Moreover, a thorough examination of the house revealed no signs of forced entry. The doors and windows were intact, and there was no evidence of tampered locks. It was as if the intruders had simply walked in, which suggested that they were either let in by someone or were already inside. As part of standard procedure, the police asked for Shahnaz's mobile phone. Without hesitation, she handed over the iPhone Jaffaruddin had gifted her, confident it would reveal nothing incriminating. The officers combed through her call logs and messages but found no leads. However, Shahnaz had underestimated the police's determination. While interviewing neighbors and relatives, they stumbled upon whispers of a hidden phone, one she supposedly used in secret. Acting on this lead, they intensified their search and eventually found the second phone, tucked away in a drawer beneath old clothes. This phone, registered under a false name, contained a treasure trove of damning evidence. Messages and call logs revealed regular contact with someone named Kamal, including exchanges from the night of the murder. The discovery of the phone marked a turning point in the investigation. The police tracked down Kamal and brought him in for questioning. Initially, he denied any involvement, claiming he hadn't seen Shahnaz in years. But under pressure and faced with the overwhelming evidence from the phone, Kamal's story began to crumble. He confessed to his affair with Shahnaz and admitted that he had been at the house the night of the murder. However, he tried to shift the blame entirely onto her, claiming that the plan was hers and that he had acted only out of love and desperation. Confronted with Kamal's confession, Shahnaz broke down during her interrogation. She admitted to orchestrating the murder, explaining that she saw no other way to be with Kamal. She painted herself as a victim of circumstance, trapped in a loveless marriage and manipulated by her feelings for Kamal. But the police were unsympathetic. They saw through her attempts to deflect blame and recognized the cold, calculated nature of her actions. The way she had planned every detail. The argument to send Jaffer to sleep in the drawing room, the use of a pressure cooker to avoid leaving obvious forensic evidence, and her rehearsed story for the morning, all pointed to premeditation. As the case went to trial, the courtroom was packed with people eager to hear the scandalous details of a crime that had shocked the community. The prosecution presented a compelling case, highlighting the evidence from the hidden phone, Kamal's confession, and the inconsistencies in Shahnaz's initial story. The defense tried to portray Shahnaz as a victim of societal pressure, an oppressive marriage, and her own misguided emotions. But the jury was unconvinced. The brutal nature of the crime and the betrayal of trust were too glaring to overlook. Shahnaz and Kamal were both found guilty of murder and conspiracy. They were sentenced to life imprisonment, their dreams of a future together reduced to ashes. The tragedy left a lasting scar on everyone involved. Jaffaruddin's sons, now orphans in every sense, were taken in by their grandparents. They struggled to come to terms with the loss of their father and the betrayal by their mother. As for the community, the story became a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of how unchecked desires and unresolved emotions could lead to devastating consequences. The house that was meant to be a symbol of love and family became the site of a heinous crime. The celebration of Eid, once filled with joy and togetherness, turned into a day of mourning. And the lives entangled in this web of deceit and passion were forever changed, leaving behind a legacy of pain and regret. Shahnaz's carefully rehearsed story about two masked intruders began to unravel almost immediately. The police, seasoned investigators accustomed to spotting inconsistencies, found her account suspicious. The supposed robbery lacked any of the hallmarks of a genuine crime. Nothing of significant value was taken, except for a chain that seemed almost planted in the narrative to give it credibility. If you enjoyed this story and want more gripping, real-life tales, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support keeps us bringing you the most captivating stories. The forensic team, too, found damning evidence. Blood splatter patterns indicated that the attack had been brutal and precise, carried out by someone who knew their way around the house. The pressure cooker, found beside Jafaruddin's body, bore fingerprints, evidence that would later play a key role in the investigation. Shahnaz's demeanor, initially sorrowful and shocked, began to crack under the weight of police questioning. Detectives pressed her for details about the alleged intruders, how they entered, how they escaped, and why they killed her husband but left the house mostly untouched. Her answers were vague and inconsistent, raising more questions than they answered. When neighbors were questioned, they painted a troubling picture. Several had noticed Kamal's frequent visits to the house, both before and after the family moved to Noida. Whispers of an affair had circulated for years, though most dismissed them as idle gossip. But now, in the context of Jafaruddin's murder, these rumors took on a sinister significance. The turning point in the investigation came when the police discovered Shahnaz's hidden phone. Tipped off by a neighbor, officers searched the house thoroughly and found the device tucked away in a box of old clothes. This phone, registered under a false identity, revealed a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. The call logs showed frequent communication between Shahnaz and Kamal, with messages exchanged late into the night. The content of these messages was damning, detailing their ongoing affair and their plans for a future together, plans that included removing Jafaruddin from the picture permanently. On May 10, 2022, both Shahnaz and Kamal were arrested. The police tracked Kamal down to his small rented room in a nearby town, where he was living under an assumed name. During the arrest, Kamal initially tried to deny everything, but confronted with the evidence from the phone and witnesses, he broke down and confessed. Kamal's confession was chilling. He admitted to his affair with Shahnaz, detailing how they had planned the murder for weeks. They had deliberately chosen Eid as the time to strike, believing that the festive atmosphere would make Jafaruddin less suspicious. Kamal recounted how Shahnaz had lured her husband into sleeping in the drawing room, making it easier for them to carry out the attack. Shahnaz, confronted with Kamal's confession, initially maintained her innocence. But under relentless questioning, she, too, confessed to her role in the crime. She painted herself as a victim, claiming she had been manipulated by Kamal, but her detailed involvement in the planning and execution of the murder told a different story. The trial became a media sensation, capturing the attention of the entire region. The courtroom was packed with journalists, neighbors, and curious onlookers eager to witness the unfolding drama. The prosecution built a strong case against Shahnaz and Kamal, presenting the phone records, Kamal's confession, and forensic evidence as proof of their guilt. They described how the pair had betrayed Jafaruddin, a hard-working man who had sacrificed so much for his family, and coldly plotted his murder for their own selfish desires. The defense, on the other hand, tried to portray Shahnaz as a victim of emotional and financial neglect, driven into Kamal's arms by her husband's long absences. They argued that Kamal had been the mastermind, manipulating Shahnaz into participating in the crime. The jury deliberated for several days, weighing the mountain of evidence against the defense's attempts to cast doubt on Shahnaz's role. In the end, the verdict was clear. Both Shahnaz and Kamal were found guilty of murder and conspiracy. The judge handed down life sentences to both, condemning their actions as not only a violation of the law but also a betrayal of trust and family values. In his closing remarks, the judge described Jafaruddin's murder as a tragedy that had destroyed an entire family and left two innocent children to bear the scars of their parents' actions. Shahnaz and Kamal now sit in separate cells in Putna jail, their dreams of a life together reduced to ash. Their one secret affair is now the talk of the town, a cautionary tale of how unchecked desires can lead to ruin. For Jafaruddin's two sons, the future remains uncertain. taken in by their grandparents, they faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives without the father who had worked so hard to secure their future. The elder son, who discovered his father's body that fateful morning, continues to struggle with the trauma of what he saw and the betrayal by his mother. The story of Shahnaz and Kamal has left a deep scar on the community. For neighbors and friends who once envied the family's apparent happiness, the revelation of what lay beneath the surface has been a sobering reminder that appearances can be deceiving. If you've watched this so far, don't forget to like, share, and reflect on the lessons of this story. Stay tuned for more real-life tales that reveal the dark truths behind seemingly perfect lives.